This can bring everyone in and lift everyone up. This can give new voices a way to be heard and new ideas a place to thrive. This can take what each of us does best and give it incredible power. This can erase the limits we see and the labels we feel. This can grow new leaders and endless opportunities. This can make us even more confident, more capable, and more committed. This can create wonders and huge rewards. This is a culture of equality. We call the ones who light the way the culture makers. And to make this a reality, it has to be a priority. For leaders, for all of us.
With a bang, energy and change came to every part of our universe. Seismic or small, it continues.
Change is all around us, shaped by technology and human ingenuity. We can make it work for you and your business.
My name is Julie Sweet, CEO of Accenture, and I am proud to lead one of the most inclusive and diverse companies in the world. You can only have a culture of equality if you start with the belief that diversity matters, that it's not only the right thing to do, but that it's an important part of your business. You then have a commitment to actually have a diverse company. When I think about what steps that we're taking at Accenture to build a culture of equality, I go right back to the research that we published that laid out a roadmap, because it is the roadmap that we followed, and it has 3 components. The first is leadership, and that's about having commitment from the top, setting clear goals, holding leaders accountable, and being very clear that our commitment to diversity and to a culture of equality are a business priority, just like our other business priorities. The second component of that roadmap is about programs and policies and making sure you have the right ones in place. And that's everything from having the right employee resource groups to things like parental leave. And the third component, which is critical, is all about having the right environment, which means that people can come to work, they can bring their whole selves to work, and that not only do we make sure that the great diversity of our workforce is reflected at our leadership tables, but that those who are at the leadership table not only have a seat there, but they have a voice.
Good afternoon. On behalf of TAG and the Converge Planning Committee, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's sessions. My name is Jeff Sawyer. I'm a managing director at Accenture here in Atlanta. I lead our Atlanta Innovation Hub, and I'm the chairperson for the Converge Planning Committee. I am delighted to welcome you to today's closing keynote, a conversation between Jimmy Etheredge, CEO of Accenture North America, and WSB anchor Fred Blankenship. And I have the honor of introducing them both. Many of you likely know Fred. He is an anchor on Channel 2 Action News, where he's been since 2007, coverage you can count on. An award-winning anchor and reporter, Fred's distinguished broadcasting career spans several stations, cities, and many stories. He's won an award for stories on drug prevention and community outreach in San Diego, and he worked chasing storms on a regular basis in Kansas. At KRON in San Francisco, he was part of a team that received the prestigious Edward R. Murrow Award for the documentary About Race, a study of cultural and social behaviors of different ethnic groups. Fred has been a member of the National Association of Black Journalists and a member of the National Press Photographers Association. Fred's true passion is working with kids and young adults to help ensure they get the necessary encouragement and support to accomplish whatever it is they wish to do in life. Fred will be talking with Jimmy Etheredge. Like Fred, Jimmy is a big part of the community here in Atlanta. A graduate of Georgia Tech, Jimmy joined Accenture in 1985 and became North America's CEO in 2019. Before becoming CEO, Jimmy led Accenture's business in the Southeast, including major markets such as Atlanta, Charlotte, and Washington, D.C. In that role, Jimmy brought innovation to clients, attracted top talent, and strengthened the company's impact in communities. He also extended Accenture's innovation network, creating our Atlanta Innovation Hub in Tech Square and expanding our innovation hub in Washington, D.C. Jimmy is passionate about paving paths for people. He is a champion of improving equality, a proactive supporter of mental well-being programs, and an advocate for bridging gaps for vulnerable communities. Jimmy helped bring Accenture's National Professional Apprenticeship Program to its Atlanta and D.C. innovation hubs, giving members of underrepresented groups new skills so that they can adapt and thrive in the digital economy. Today, Jimmy and Fred will discuss the role of inclusion in innovation and how an inclusive culture spells business success. Without further ado, I give you Jimmy Etheredge and Fred Blankenship.
Well, hello, Converge 2020. My name is Fred Blankenship with WSB-TV, Channel 2 Action News here in wonderful Atlanta. I have the privilege and honor of being a morning anchor here for WSB-TV, and I've been here for the past 13 years, and I absolutely love my job. Not only do I get to tell stories, but I get to start your day off with energy and enthusiasm and maybe some 90s R&B and hip hop to help you with your day as well. A great part of my job is being a part of wonderful conferences like this. Yes, in 2020, we are seemingly all virtual, and I get to talk to amazing people. And this chat we're having is with somebody who really needs no introduction, but I will give it anyway because he's done amazing things. Jimmy Etheredge, Mr. Jimmy Etheredge, serves as the CEO of Accenture North America. And Jimmy is a champion of improving equality, a proactive supporter of mental well-being programs, and an advocate for bridging gaps across communities. And during this section, we will explore techniques and programs that Jimmy has put in place across Accenture, which is accent on the future, and clients in the community to drive inclusion and innovation. Jimmy, it's a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. How are you doing today?
Well, Fred, it's my pleasure as well. Thank you for the very kind introduction. I'm doing great like everybody else. Just surviving 2020.
You know, surviving 2020. And before we get to how we're surviving 2020, you know what? You are from Georgia. I like people from Georgia. Good old Gordon, Georgia, right there between Macon and Milledgeville. Tell me about growing up in Georgia.
Yes. So, Fred, I grew up in middle Georgia. I know to most everyone from Atlanta, anything south of Griffin is just called South Georgia, but there's a lot still further south of Macon and Milledgeville. But I grew up in a very small rural town, really a mining town, kaolin, chalk. Some of the world's largest kaolin deposits are in middle Georgia. And so I grew up in a town with no stoplights, no fast food restaurants, very small. But my father went to Georgia Tech, and my grandfather had gone to Georgia Tech. So it was sort of preordained what I was going to do once I graduated high school. And so I came to Atlanta to Georgia Tech. And apart from 6 years in London, I've spent most of my life here in Atlanta.
Most of your life here in Atlanta, a small town in Georgia. Yes, South Georgia to many folks here. And, I ask you about your background here, Jimmy, because we all have something that drives us. And what has driven you, and how has that impacted Accenture, especially when we talk about innovation, and how has your drive and passion for diversity had an impact on you and your company's innovation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Fred, we talked about, I grew up in a small town in middle Georgia. I'm not sure I understood what diversity was then. Mm-hmm. And, it was mainly a question of whether you're going to be a Methodist or a Baptist in the little town that I grew up in. And I came to school at Georgia Tech, to the big city, of Atlanta, and began to get exposed to, a lot more people that didn't look like me, that didn't grow up in the same way that I grew up. And my family was always big on education. My mother actually got a PhD, which is kind of pretty unusual for a small town of 2,000 in middle Georgia. And so I always enjoyed learning and new experiences. And I think that's one of the things that had me come to work at Accenture. I just wanted to experience new things. And without a doubt, I think the career that I've had in consulting and the fact that I've lived overseas, et cetera, opened my eyes to a much more diverse world than I grew up in. And always I felt like, I have certainly grown up with plenty of privilege and power. And I mean, I worked really hard my whole career, but I've seen my ability to leverage those to make change happen in, the community around me, the client around me, or where I'm working. And I guess that's just something I probably gathered more and more passion around, as I just grew up and spent more time, with lived experiences in a lot of places with a lot of different people.
You mentioned you grew up and you mentioned how it came in different places and different experiences. And growing up, you didn't know much about diversity. In our day and time right now, a lot of folks are having conversations that we didn't have before. What do you think? How do you think people are dealing with these conversations, and how is it impacting business?
Well, you're right. I mean, I think these are trying times. Mm-hmm. And I think many days I see things that inspire me, that change is happening, long overdue, but change is happening and it's positive. And then there's days that I'm discouraged because I feel like, we're still stuck with some issues that we've had for many, many years that we're, struggling with. And, one of the things, obviously I spend a lot of time in technology, and you can see how today our world can be as big as we want it to be, as diverse as we want it to be in terms of experiences, in terms of being able to connect with people that are thousands of miles away from you. But, it is also fantastic at creating echo chambers where you really just spend your time with people that have the same views as you. And so I think as it relates to diversity, this is the paradox as it relates to what is happening with technology, towards our society, and how you can see it has the promise of really helping us address some of these issues in ways we never have before. Many of my friends and myself, have been affected by seeing mobile phone, video of what's happening to Black men in terms of interactions with police, in ways that have affected me that I don't think would have been the case if it was something I just read about or perhaps had heard about. So I think there's things that technology is doing to really help us address these issues. But then I also see some of the challenges that it has of people not always listening and engaging with others who have different views so that they can, learn from those perspectives.
Okay, so let's talk about how Accenture is tackling this right now with the inclusion and diversity right now, and across your company and across the board here. How is that being put into practice, and what are you seeing from it?
Right. Well, so at Accenture, we have our set of core values, and equality and respect for individuals are ones that I've grown up with. I've been with Accenture for 35 years. And these are, I think, timeless values and ones that our organization feels like we want to be driven by. So what's important to me is I want, every one of our people to feel seen, safe, connected, and courageous with what they're doing at work. And so that means they need to be able to bring their authentic selves to work. I want them to be able to be themselves. And so in order for that to happen, equality and inclusion are non-negotiable. You have to have them. You can't have any tolerance whatsoever for racism, for hate of any kind. And again, whether that's something to do with someone's sexual orientation, the color of their skin, their religion. And so I think at Accenture, those have all been very core to us. And so then what do we do about it? How do we try to live those values? We like to set aggressive goals, and we announced some goals just earlier in September of this year that where we want to be by 2025 in terms of representation of our Black and African American employees and our Latinx Hispanic American employees. And this kind of comes after external announcements that we made 4 years ago around gender, where we said we want to be 50-50 for all binary gender employees by 2025. And so I think we like setting goals, making them public, and then really focusing on, okay, what do we need to do to make this a place that attracts that diverse talent, to be here at Accenture.
And so you're looking around and you're seeing what works and what needs to improve, and you have some long-term goals. How is that working right now in this Zoom world, technology world that we're living in right now?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly different. I think I've been part of an organization that has been fairly virtual for a long time. So most of us travel and spend time at clients. Sometimes we're in the office, sometimes we're working from home. So I think, we already had all of the collaborative technology that you need, and we're a little more accustomed, I think, to video being a way that we, work with each other. Probably a lot less examples of us working with clients that way. That's part of the travel aspect of this career that I'm in, is you go fly and you spend time to where the client is. But what it has meant, I think, is more emphasis needed around communication. And if I just think about our employees since March, right? You've got a pandemic, so you have people that are worried about their health and the health of their family and loved ones. You've had a recession. So you have everyone worried about their jobs, income, being able to pay the bills, and you've got this social unrest with people worried about what direction is the country going, and are we going to, improve the lives of people that are vulnerable or underrepresented. And so with all that going on, I have seen a higher expectation from corporations and their employees to have leadership talk to them about what are our values, how are we going to make a difference, not just with our clients and make a profit, but how we're going to make a difference in our communities. And I think that's one of the things that with the times that we're in right now, with everyone working from home, the need to talk, communicate, and share some of the things that we're doing to make a difference is really important.
And I think what you're talking about, kind of coming together and sometimes being uncomfortable, right? And you got to dip your toe into some things that maybe you're not used to being a part of. And like when you came out of Georgia Tech, I believe your first job was in women's retail fashion. And,
yes.
And chances are you didn't know too much about that at the time.
I did not. They taught me a lot of things in industrial engineering at Georgia Tech, but women's shoes was not part of them. But I think to your earlier point, Fred, you do have to become comfortable talking about uncomfortable things. Another area that I think is increasingly important is around people's mental health. Yeah. And one of the things I share a lot is it's okay not being okay. And I think that the willingness of people, leaders, to be vulnerable, to share that they don't always have it together, to share how they're feeling about what's happening outside. I think it's really important from an authenticity perspective so that people believe, hey, this person does really care. This person's struggling with some of the things that I see on television every day, the same as I am. And I think it's just a really important aspect of today's leaders.
It's important, and I think it's something that certainly wasn't talked about before time, being okay, not being okay, because everybody says I'm fine, I can do it, and you've always thought maybe as an employee, or maybe I don't want to show that weakness to my employer, but that's really something that we have to bridge that gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, and also, speaking of corporations, corporations have had a long image of only caring about profits. And, is that perception changing? There's a phrase in a song that says, cash rules everything around me, dollar bills. And, is that changing at this point in our society? And does it need to?
Well, I think what I feel today is our employees have higher expectations, not only for the companies that they work for, right, but for the companies that they buy products and services from, in terms of what are your values, what is your sense of social responsibility? Do you care about the environment? Do you care about people that are suffering today? Or do you just care about profit? And so I think this concept of trust is going to be increasingly important for companies, for the private sector. You want your brand to stand for something that people trust and put value in. So, in our case, we just announced with our Q4 earnings in September that we are going to be working through how we develop a responsibility index in the work that we do with clients, because it's important that as we're helping clients transform, that we are helping them with, for example, what does this mean for their employees and what skills the employees need to be successful? What's the future of work going to look like? It means from a environmental perspective, people want to know how do we, if we travel all the time, it's not good for the environment. So what are you trying to do to address that? What are you doing in your office spaces and how people work, to really help with some of the things that we see happening around us in the environment? And so I think these are now more and more important. Sometimes, Fred, I think when I talk to other leaders, there's cynicism that people have in what have been the traditional sources of trusted institutions. And I think that's another reason that they are expecting more from the private sector in terms of us talking about what we stand for.
Well, in 3 to 5 years from now, you mentioned goals too, and things have to change. What would you say is hopefully, your greatest accomplishment based on what's happening today? What will you be, at least in your thoughts right now, what are you going to be most proud of?
Mm-hmm. Well, to start with, of course, I bleed Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so I have a lot of pride and passion for Atlanta being, the very best place it can be for everybody that lives here. And that's one of the reasons that I've always been very, active locally here in the community. Everything from trying to create apprentice programs so that we can, teach technology skills to people who otherwise would not have access, to help them get jobs. Mm-hmm. Or, along with a number of other executives, I'm going to be, sleeping out with Covenant House in November. Hopefully we're going to continue to have this nice, easy fall weather for that. Yeah. But I think I care a lot about what happens here in Atlanta. And I think we have wonderful opportunity to be a great example of that future that we all want to have. When, I spent 6 years living in London, and when I moved back, I had an 8th grader, a 6th grader, and a 1st grader. And I remember the first couple times we went out to eat, we went to a big shopping mall. We didn't have a lot of shopping malls over where we were in London. And so we go to eat in the food court, and my kids asked me, Dad, why do all the black people and the white people sit separately? And it really struck me because having lived outside the U.S. and come back, to hear my kids kind of have that perspective. And I think in Atlanta, we have a lot of wonderful things going for us here, but there's still a lot of challenges. And if you look at the fact that we don't have enough mobility economically for people. So if you're born in a poor zip code in Atlanta, odds are you're going to die poor. And so I think these are the things, Fred, that I really want to help change for us. And I've given up on my sports teams being super successful here, so I'm going to just have to make sure that it's a great place to live, even if we don't have good sports teams.
I tell you, don't lose hope, my friend. Don't lose hope. There's always that next game, we hope. But you brought up something pretty interesting there, right? And it's something that I found this to be the case, at least, that you had a conversation. Why are the black people over there, and why are the white people over here? Right, and that's something I think that was a taboo conversation a while ago, a short while ago. How does business and technology, how does Accenture bridge that gap? I mean, it's almost a question too large to sit down for a half hour, but how would you go about doing that?
Well, I think one of the first things I think about is making sure that the technology does no harm. And so I think I worry about that future of work. I worry about some people being left behind as technology becomes more and more a part of everything that we do. And, as always, whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about healthcare and the pandemic, whether we're talking about the recession, it is typically those communities of color that are going to be the ones most negatively affected by things like that. So I think at Accenture, one of the things that we try to do is to pave paths to a better future for people that are struggling today, and look at how can we use technology in order to do that. I think a second thing that technology enables us to do is to promote equality, to fight racism and bigotry, and to just create more opportunities for people. And so some of that is in how we, as I mentioned before, we make visible to people what's happening out there. Some of it is how we can use technology to drive more conversation, more dialogue. I think, dialogue is really important to solving some of these problems that we're facing today. And so I think these are just some of the ways that I see that technology is going to change things, and I think that Accenture is trying to be a leader in making that happen.
Dialogue and conversation is beyond important. Right now, we're just two guys having a conversation. What advice do you have for us today? I mean, you have so many life lessons. Your job is to bridge the gap. But what advice do you have for us on doing that, and where do you see it going?
Well, I think, kind of picking up on this dialogue point, we all need to listen and educate ourselves, and listen to people that have other lived experiences than the ones that we have, and truly value those things. Fred, I'm a glass half full optimist at my core, and so I always sort of believe in the best in people, and always believe in the best intentions. And I think even when I talk with people that have different points of view from me, I try to have that same, perspective. So I think listening is one key part of it. I think the second is to take action. And I am also guilty sometimes of being discouraged when big things around me that I feel like I have very little control or influence over are negative and kind of bringing me down. But I try to focus my energy on what can I do to make a difference, even if it's only going to be in one little part of Atlanta, and it's not going to affect what's happening in other parts of the U.S. or other parts of the world. How can I make a difference? And so I think that's the other thing that's important for all of us. We all have the ability to do that. Obviously, we're in an election year, and this to me is a perfect example of, voting. Make sure your voice counts, at the ballot box. And I think these are the things in terms of listening and taking action that if we can all do these, and sometimes they may seem small, inconsequential, but they do add up to change.
We can listen to each other. That is a great start. We should do that more. I want to read a quote that you had right now, and it says, "Businesses must be champions of improving equality and getting members of an underrepresented group new skills so they can adapt and think in this new economy." Just how vital is that to our success?
I think it's very core to our success. I mean, we see how rapidly things are changing, around us. Yeah. And a lot of times when I talk to people, what they feel that emotional connection with is, their children. And what kind of world are we going to leave for our children and our children's children? And I think this is why it's really so important for us to lean into these hard things now. Don't get discouraged. Sometimes, you got to break a couple of eggs to make an omelet is the old saying. And I think there's things that are very troubling that we're dealing with right now. But I believe that it's going to enable us to create that better future that we all want for our kids and for the generations to follow. And so I think it's very core to what we've got to do. And I think, my part, look, I've grown up in the private sector, Fred, so I know businesses, I know clients, and so I tend to look at it through what do I think business can do to help. There are other people smarter than me with what government should be doing more and better of, what education should be doing more and better of, but I see the opportunity that corporations have to really make a difference, to create opportunity for others that otherwise wouldn't have them. And so I think it's very core to the impact that we all want to have, the legacy that we all want to leave.
The legacy that we all want to leave. And I want to give you a chance to sum up what Accenture is doing and what Accenture will do in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, we want to help transform and change things for the better. And that means work that we do with clients. That means work that we do in our communities to make a difference. People come to Accenture because they want to do well. We have a great reputation as a wonderful place to build a career. But they come here not only to do well, but they also want to do good. And so they want to make an impact in the world around them. And I think that's what, as a leader at Accenture, I'm trying to enable them to do every day.
Well, you're doing that just fine, sir. I tell you what, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for taking the time from Gordon, Georgia, to Georgia Tech, to women's shoes, which you did not know about, but grew from that and all the way to the CEO, Accenture North America, Mr. Jimmy Etheredge. We appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much. And as always, I appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Fred. It's a wonderful topic. I'm glad to spend some time talking with you about it.
Me too. Thank you.
Wow. So listen, I want to welcome you back. That was incredible. That was a great, fantastic interview.